Welcome back, everyone. Another session on the Transform Parenting Summit. I met Lauren just recently, and I was very interested in her work around decluttering and helping people with the noise of their home, the noise of their heads, and all sorts of things in between. And as a result of that conversation, I was inspired to include her in the summit because this is very much around helping you to transform as parents and looking at things that really move the needle for families and can help them to feel more connected to their kids. And so this is a very practical session with the lovely Lauren. So thank you for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I just wish that I had had this information when I was in the early stages
Oh,
of parenting. So
cool.
I'm very excited to be able to share this
Oh, good
today.
on you. Thank you. Well, tell us, Lauren, how it all started.
Oh, well, to begin with, I do want to say that this is the information that I wish I had had.
Mm,
And I'm absolutely not here to tell anyone that they're doing parenting wrong. And
yeah.
I'm not here to say, look at me, I'm the best parent in the world. I have cried, I have yelled, I've let my kids cry, I have used bribery. I've forgotten to pick up my kid at least twice. I've dropped them off at
I've done
school on a
that too.
pupil-free day. Like, I have made mistakes, and despite my best intentions and my unconditional love for my kids, I often feel like I am failing
Mm,
or doing an absolutely terrible job. But the truth is, we all screw up occasionally.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we're all going to fail from time to time.
So tell us how decluttering kind of helped you with parenting. Tell us how that happened.
So for me, decluttering really is everything. It's every part of my life now.
Mm,
But my sort of parenting journey started 14 years ago. My son is nearly 14, and we had a really, really rocky start. Uh, Charlie was a happy accident while I was at uni. I dropped out of uni so that I could give my whole attention to my job as a new mum.
mm,
We had a traumatizing birth. He was a very sickly baby. We
wow.
had problems sleeping. We had about 2 years of just overwhelm,
Mm,
stress,
mm,
mental clutter.
yeah, right.
It was, I have memories of just a terrible, terrible beginning
Mm,
and always searching for the perfect solution. I was trying to find the checklist, the course, the planner, the to dos, the structure, like the guidebook, you
mm,
know?
mm.
And the truth is, Tracy, it's not there. There isn't one.
I think that's the biggest shock, isn't it? How do you do this? They don't come with a manual.
No. And even though there are millions of professionals out there, there are millions of books, there are millions of successful human beings who have obviously been parented reasonably successfully. Nobody has the exact blueprint for you or for your child.
Mm,
And that frustrated me because I like to have it clear in front of me so I know I'm doing it. I like to tick off those check boxes. But after so much struggle in those early days, we're actually in a really good place now. And I 100% believe that my decluttering mindset is what has taken us from there to now.
mm.
100%.
So this is really interesting because we can't control our babies. We can't control when they cry and when they sleep, and a lot of these things are part of the letting go period of new parenting. But there are things we can control.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, the idea of being able to control anything is almost laughable to me now because of
Yeah.
all the things that I have tried to control and failed, quite frankly. I don't resent that anymore. I don't regret that anymore because learning to fail is really important. But what you can control, and what I'm constantly reminding myself, as well as my clients and my students and my kids, is
Mm,
that the only thing you can truly control are your own actions.
yeah, yeah.
So we can't change what's going on around us. We
Mm,
can't change the people around us and what they do, but we can change how we respond to them. We can change what we choose to accept. We can change what we choose to allow into our homes, and we can choose what we are willing to do or not do. with our time, our space, our energy, and everything else. And that's where that decluttering mindset comes in for me. To help avoid a spiral of internal questions and potentially rage quitting, which I have been very prone to in the past and try to avoid in the future, I summarize my decluttering mindset model into the acronym Declutter, DCLTR. So what does that mean? That stands for dream. D is for dream. I always want myself, my clients, and everyone to dream really big. Get really, really clear on your dream life and then use that as your goal. Everything you do is working towards that dream. That's the big picture thinking. So in the case of our audience today, Tracy, I'm assuming you want peaceful parenting. That's why you've come to this session. So dreaming big. Then C is for curate. This is where we take that big dream and we get really niche down to that nitty-gritty detailed thinking. Every single decision you make, you are using a curator's mindset. Think of your life as an art gallery, consciously and mindfully editing what is worthy of the space here with that dream in mind. So every detail is taking you either closer to or preventing you from that dream. That's the curation. L in declutter is learn. We want to be open-minded. We want to be curious. You're going to observe what is or isn't working for you and learn from your own experiences and even those experiences shared by others. This part can be really tricky as a parent, especially as a new parent or an expectant parent, because we are bombarded with information. The key in this learn is the open-minded and curious, but not accepting every single thing we are given as gospel. You want to toy with it. You want to try things out. And that's where we come to T, try. The things we learn, test them. See how they work. Do they fit with you? Do they fit with your goals? Continue to be open-minded and curious, but be willing to let go of the things that aren't working. So L and T are learn and try, where you're being open to that information. You're asking the questions and deciding for yourself where it fits in your goals, in your dream, in that curated life that you're wanting and aiming for. And then finally, R is for reset. It could also be for review or repeat. It's the same deal, because as long as you live, life is continuing to change and clutter continues to present itself in your life. When you reset your space or review your goals, you're repeating the DCLTR declutter process. And that means you're living with a decluttering mindset and you are ready to deal with all that new clutter quickly and easily, so much so that you'll barely even notice it comes in at all. So that's the goal there for decluttering, and that's the mindset that I teach. Now that seems ridiculously simple, doesn't it? It's 5 letters. Just keep, asking questions and trying things out. But how is that different to what you're already doing?
So can I ask a question, Lauren?
Please.
So when you talk about decluttering, I'm assuming you're talking about internal mindset decluttering and the implications that has on external clutter as well.
So I'm talking about all of it.
Yeah.
I started by dealing with the physical clutter. And that's the easiest stuff for most people, because we can pick something up. We can deal with the tangible. Yeah. You can hold a cracked coffee mug and ask a couple of questions and decide whether or not it's worth keeping. That can be difficult, but it is much easier than dealing with these ingrained stories that we have, with the expectations that we have of ourselves, with the obligation we feel to other people. But they're the same thing. They're still clutter, they're still standing in our way, and we can actually deal with them in a very similar process. But by dealing with the physical stuff, you're working what I consider your decluttering muscles. You're practicing those mindset strategies to make it easier to deal with the harder stuff later or as you go. You'll also notice, and this is where that learning and trying comes in, you're being open-minded and curious about your own reasoning. If you're keeping something out of guilt, where else are you keeping something out of guilt? Where else are you making choices and decisions based on guilt? And the same strategies that you use and the same reasoning that you use to keep or declutter something physical out of guilt, you can use to choose to keep or declutter an idea or an obligation or a relationship out of guilt.
Yeah, I think that's what we don't realize as humans, that our external world often reflects our internal world and vice versa.
So much so.
So I love your approach. I work with people as a therapist to help them with their subconscious thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, very helpful. And I guess what you're saying there is I probably do that too
Absolutely.
in the subconscious closet. And we look at some of the experiences and perceptions and belief systems that we have, and we upgrade them and reframe them, or we let go of them. Actually, some of them are not even worth keeping. And that then influences their experience of reality. But I love your approach, because you're going, let's start external and then see what happens internal. So tell us a little bit about your experience of helping people to do this.
Well, I often start with my own experience because that's the one I know most intimately. And I've found that sharing my stories help my clients individually. I can explain exactly what worked for me, but just because it worked for me does not necessarily mean it's going to work for someone else. So I like to share in one-on-one conversations with my clients why something did or didn't work for me, and how and why that may or may not fit with them. But so for me, I had so much mental clutter, so much. It was years of what I now know to be trauma with my firstborn, that was a reflection of issues I'd built up over my entire life.
Yeah.
As would not be a surprise to you at all, Tracy. I'm still dealing with that mental clutter. Yeah. It's an ongoing thing. It is for everybody. Nobody is perfect. But to begin with, I had so much in there. It was, and of course, I'm going to use physical examples. If you go to like a packed garage that's like, you know, boxes falling on top of you, you open that and you just go, oh, I can't deal with that. Cannot deal with that. Close it, not now. Like, I'll do that when I have time. I'll get around to that one day. I was doing that with my brain. I was like, I cannot deal with this. And honestly, I couldn't. There was no way I could deal with that. I was trying to get through each day, each hour, each minute. I was just in survival mode. So dealing with long-term trauma in my brain was just not an option. I did not have the time or the energy to do that. What I could do was clear a little bit of space on my kitchen bench. I could empty out some expired stuff from the fridge. I could tidy up my kids' toys. I could declutter some clothes that don't work for me anymore. I can deal with small, simple tasks that I can see and feel. They're tangible. And then I can see and feel the tangible difference they make in my life. You can see it in the world around you. And that was so much easier for me to start with than working on the brain stuff.
Yeah, really interesting.
And I didn't realize at the time, but working on that tangible stuff helped me to see where I could make decisions more easily in my mind with the mental clutter.
I've absolutely had that experience myself. You know, when I go through, and I love to throw out. I'm not a hoarder at all. I'm quite the opposite. But I know that when I deal with things that are really starting to irritate me, like my wardrobe or whatever, and I give myself the time and the space to just focus on that particular area. If I try to do the whole house, it's just way too much. But that particular area, it creates a spaciousness in you. And I think that's it's and every time you walk into that wardrobe, it's and it's easier to get things what you need when you need it, because you can see everything better and it's much better. So I really appreciate what you're saying.
So all of my clients have a different experience. They've all come to me with a different story. They've come to me with different levels of clutter, physically and mentally. one that has really stood out to me in my membership. So she's an ongoing member of my work. And so she's been following my plans and my suggestions for over a year.
Yeah.
And she has noticed and shared with the group recently that she finds herself going in flows. So everything's too hard, everything's overwhelming, but I know my DCLTR process, my declutter process. I'm going to start with just this space and I'm going to deal with just what I can handle right now. And that might just be the kitchen bench.
Yeah, yeah.
It might be one tiny space on the kitchen bench. For that matter, it could be one single item. It doesn't matter, but she starts where she can manage. She does that, and she finds that by doing that physical thing, she can clear space mentally, and then she can take the time to work on some thoughts, some anger, some sadness, whatever is happening in her head, deal with that, and then she has more mental capacity to deal with the next physical challenge. And then she can do a bigger space.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. It totally makes sense. So the families watching these interviews are families with young children, and young children have toys and they have lots of things.
So many things.
Apparently we need when it comes to having children. How would you encourage people to start to work with their declutter process? What would you tell them?
Well, as always, I start with the D for dream. Start with your dream, because what you actually want for your family, for yourself, and for your child is going to be different than what anyone else wants. It might look a little bit similar, but you can only control, as we said, you can only control your actions. You can't change your child. You can't change your partner's attitude. You can't change your mother-in-law. You can work on yourself. And how would you like to be approaching this situation? What would you like that space to look like physically?
So when you say dream, you're talking about the physical space.
So both.
Right.
Both your physical and mental. So in fact, if you're listening to this now, take a moment after I've explained this, take a moment to just pause, close your eyes, and actually visualize. I want you to visualize the physical space, because that is easier to deal with. Visualize coming home. Visualize, where you kick your shoes off, where you put your bag down. Do you have room at your kitchen bench to make dinner? Do you have room to sit down and eat a takeaway, or whatever it is that you want to do? What does coming home at the end of the day look like to you? If you've got your kids in tow, are they big enough now to put their own things away? And do they know how to do that? Do they know where it belongs? Do you have space and time in your day to sit down by yourself and put your feet up and have a hot drink or a glass of wine or something? So we're starting to move away from the physical and not just what the place looks like, but what does your day look like? What does the time that you have for yourself or for your children or for your household? What does your sort of schedule clutter look like? And then we move into, how do you feel in that space? So it's not just how it looks, but when you come home, you should feel relaxed. Does it feel warm? Does it feel welcoming? Does it feel fun? What do you want that space to feel like? So take a moment to pause and visualize the ideal, absolute ideal. And then when you come back, now you're back. When you come back, think about that visualization that you had of what your goal is, what your dream is, and compare that to your reality. The difference is your clutter. If you're feeling stressed, clutter. If you don't know where you're going to put your shoes, or there's a giant pile of shoes, or there's nowhere to put your handbag down, there's some physical clutter there. If you don't have time to make dinner, you don't have space to make dinner, you don't have the interest to make dinner because you're too tired, there's clutter there that we can work through. Now, this is why we can't just go, I'm doing my whole house today and it's done, because there's so much there. It's not just well, this is my dream and this is my reality, so I'll just take that bit in the middle out and everything's fine again. That takes time. It has taken me years. I mean, like years and years. And for some people, it takes a lifetime and they still don't get there. That doesn't sound encouraging, but that's why I do what I do, because I don't want it to take anyone any longer than it absolutely has to. And you can start doing it right away.
So what you're saying then is start small.
Always start small.
Start
Yes.
in areas that are doable, that can start to transform your experience of being in your home.
For sure. And that's what I mean by working that decluttering muscle.
And then
Start
how
with
does
the
that work
easiest.
with young children, Lauren? Like really?
How does it work with young children?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I
Because you
love to
can
get the
have
kids
this
involved.
dream, but doesn't mean your kids have the dream.
Oh no, and you can't change their attitude towards that.
No,
Not
you're
not
not
by
in control of
demanding it,
that.
at least. But
Yeah.
we can teach them. And we don't want our kids to grow up with the same stresses that we had. Like every parent wants their children to have better than they did. That's how we evolve, right? So doing it with children, yes, they do present their own challenges, and you can't just declutter your kids. That is strongly frowned upon in most societies.
Shame about that.
It's tempting at times, but that's not the goal.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying, though, what I'm hearing from you is that when you bring your children home and they dump things on the floor because there's no obvious place to put them, then that's going to cause more clutter.
So we can observe that kind of thing. So if one of your clutters, the difference between your dream and reality is that the kids come home from school or, preschool or whatever, and their stuff just gets thrown down the hallway, which happens to everybody. You can recognize this is a problem for me in my household. Now, to be fair, some people don't seem to notice or care. So to them, that's not the most urgent or simple clutter to deal with. But if that's a problem for you, then that's where we can start. We start by making it clear to your kids where those things belong. You're not necessarily going to change their behavior, as in, you can't tell a 4-year-old once, you need to put your shoes away as soon as we get home. That's not exciting. That's going to fly in one ear and out the other. We know that. But you can keep on top of it by saying, when we get inside, where do your shoes go? And if they look at you like you're a crazy person, how am I supposed to know where my shoes go? Or of course they go there, that's where they've always gone. That's a place that you can edit. You can curate with them. Where's a good place for these shoes to go? I've created this space. This is where mummy's shoes go. Maybe your shoes can go next to mine. Depending on their age, depending on their ability.
Yeah. No, that's great.
You can work at that. If they're very little, if they're still in a pram, if they're not ready to take their own shoes off or anything yet, brilliant. You're starting super early. You can talk to them even before they can talk back. Take their shoes off and our shoes go here. We're going to put our shoes away now. It seems simple, but when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, even those simple things just feel like way more hassle than they need to be.
Yeah.
And the idea of tripping over someone's shoes can ruin a whole day if you're already in that mindset. So don't expect perfection. Don't expect things to change right away, but you can work at them slowly, build those little decluttering muscles, and you can teach your kids from a very young age, and you just keep working at it.
So, Lauren, talk to me about toys.
Toys. So I have a special offer regarding toys when we finish up here, Tracy, but toys are they used to be the bane of my existence, as I think they are for most parents. And I get so many questions and calls about the kids' toy space, whether it's the bedroom or the toy room or just the whole frigging house, because it's all toys all the time. And well, my kids, especially my daughter, loves being with us. Like she's not really much of a loner. She doesn't like to be alone.
Yeah.
So especially when she was younger, she was kind of always attached to me, almost. But she would bring out the toys that she wanted to play with, or I would structure my time and declutter my schedule or my mental load so that I could spend time with her when she needed that one-on-one interaction, which is something that we sort of see in social media and in parenting magazines, that you have to have this time to do these things. But for the longest time, or it felt like the longest time, that was just too high an expectation for me. But by cutting back the other things that were not a priority. By decluttering those things, I gave myself more time to spend with her. But yes, we kept all of the toys in their bedrooms. They did not have excessive anything. And I'll come back to how. But when she wanted to play with something, we'd bring that out, or she'd bring that out, and she'd play with it. And then she's very easily distracted, and she would leave things and go off and do something else. So that's when I have to kick on and say, okay, sweetie, before you bring that one out, we need to pack this one away. And, you know, some days I'm not on top of things. Some days we've got 5 or 6 activities spread around the house. But because she's grown up with this, she knows that when it's time to pack up and she knows where everything goes, it's relatively simple and easy to do. So how did we get
to is having a place for things,
having a place for everything? Yeah.
So
making it clear and easy for the kids to put away too.
Yeah.
If it's something that mum has to get out, if we've got, you know, boxes on high shelves and stuff, then mum has to behave like a preschool teacher. And that might work for you. That might be exactly what you want. But for me, I want less on my plate, and I want to teach my kids how to manage their own things.
Yeah.
And that's going to support them throughout their life.
Yeah. That's great habits to get into. One of the things I've encouraged families to do in our parent growth zone coaching, when we've looked at in our session installing healthy habits, was rotating toys and putting don't have everything out all the time, actually tucking a few things away, and then you get to, you know, rotate, and which really helps with the decluttering. So tell us more about how you decide what to keep or not when it comes to toys.
Involve the kids.
Yeah.
Toys are their belongings.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have a lot of control over most of their lives, but especially when they're younger, but the toys are theirs. What they play with and how they play is up to them. And I strongly believe that as long as your kids can like pick something up and move it, like if they're playing, they can also put things away. Yeah. You know, my dog, who is not very smart, knows where her toys go. She can't put them away because she's not that smart, but she knows where to find her toys. And they always go back to the same place. Really little kids, as long as they are physically capable of picking something up and moving it, can start to learn the habits of tidying up. Now, the tidying up only works if there are clear spaces for things. There are only clear spaces for things if we don't have too much that you can't see the space, you know, the forest for the trees. So you get the kids involved as early as possible. So I'm talking preschool age,
which most of families are.
Yes, which is fantastic. And I'm so excited that there are so many people looking at this now, because a lot of people don't consider toy clutter until their kids are older, and they're like, well, they don't play with toys anymore. That's going to be a mountain to get through. You can start doing this really early and involving the kids, like I said, as young as you can, asking them the questions and helping them to understand the reasons. So I go through all of this in a specific course that can walk you through step by step. But the main important things to consider are that if they decide they don't want something, it can no longer be their responsibility. You can keep something if there's a special teddy bear that was a gift from grandma, but your little one doesn't want it anymore or tells you they don't want it. If that means something to you, it's special to you, you can keep it. You can put it in a treasure box, you can put it in your room, you can do what you like with it, but it is no longer that child's responsibility. Because by forcing them to keep things out of guilt or obligation is going to trigger them to think that that is an important reason to keep something. And that's what we're trying to undo in the adults. At the same time, you can't force them to get rid of something. I have seen so many adults who have become, I don't want to say hoarder, because that is a very specific medical condition, mental health condition, but who have severe trouble letting things go, like debilitating trouble letting things go. And they frequently tell me that there was a time in their lives where somebody in power, usually mum, I'm afraid, got rid of some toys without their permission.
Mm.
So gave away all my toys to my younger cousin or to a neighbor, or just decided that I was too old for these things and took them away.
Mm.
And that can leave a scar.
Mm. So what if you
So
do have a child that has trouble letting go?
this is where we use the learn and try. We're trying to be really, really curious and open-minded.
Mm.
Try and figure out why they're so keen to keep these things, and let them have the choice, but give them boundaries. Kids, as I'm sure many of your experts will on this summit will tell you, that they thrive with freedom but boundaries. We have to give them choices. So we can do things like, okay, here's the toy box. The toy box is only this big, and we're going to put all of your soft toys in that toy box. I do this exact thing with my daughter. Here's the toy box. All of your soft toys go in there. If they don't fit, if we can't close the lid, there are too many. So we start with your favorites. All the favorites go in. When that's full and you've still got soft toys, we play a game, 1 in, 1 out. We pick up one. We say, what in here can I take out to make room for that one? And if you go through all of the toys in the box and you're still holding the first one, that's the one that can go. It can be hard. And if your child is getting upset or you're getting frustrated, now is not the time to do it.
Yeah, right.
You need to work through slowly, and you want it to be a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
So giving them boundaries, such as a physical boundary that they can see, a toy box, a bookshelf, whatever it might be, giving them those physical boundaries helps them to literally see how much they can have.
Mm. Do you have any sort of structures or systems around storage of toys that can be helpful?
It's going to be different for every home, just like how much you're willing to keep is going to be different for every child and every parent, every household. You were mentioning earlier about toy rotations, and they work brilliantly for several of my clients. I've never used toy rotation because when I have attempted it, I learnt about it and I tried it, and I found that I didn't have the capacity myself, emotionally or time-wise, or like I just couldn't handle remembering to go and swap toys over, and it just ended up with the clutter was just elsewhere. So it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And that was me. That wasn't about the kids. It didn't work for me. That's important too. Like, peaceful parenting comes back to the parents. So storage for rotations, you need to have it that it's kind of a weatherproof storage, big plastic containers that clip closed at least. And I recommend keeping them off the ground, because you never know when a little flood's going to happen or something like that. The clip closed is important for dust, for bugs, common sense kind of stuff, but you're likely to be storing them longer than you expect. You might not be changing your toy rotation every week or even every month. It might be 6 months or more, and then you realize that you're not going to use those toys again. And it's so much nicer to donate something that's still in good condition. So make sure that you've got sort of protected toy storage. In terms of toys that are in use or currently in the rotation, it's going to depend on the child. So some kids will respond really well to things in boxes or drawers with labels, which looks really, really pretty, but it only works if they remember it's in there. My daughter, for example, and many of my adult clients need to see something to remember it's there. Like, if you ask them, hey, where's your favorite teddy? They know the favorite teddy's in that drawer. They can find it, but they don't remember they have it, and they don't think to play with it unless they can see it. So if your kids are ignoring the things in the boxes or in the drawers, they're wasting space. They're not getting played with, they're not getting used. But when you go to declutter them, that child is going to be so excited, and it might as well have been in a toy rotation.
Yeah.
So learn what's working for your child. Ask questions, observe them. If they can't give you a direct answer, just watch how they play, because what works for one child, and this is true in each household too, what works for one child might not necessarily work for the other.
Yeah. I think for young children though, Lauren, in order to be able to play, they need to be able to see what's
Yes.
available. So I think sort of open shelves are good, and displaying toys like you'd see in a library or somewhere, or in
Yes.
a toy shop even,
Yeah.
helps them to access it, rather than behind drawers where they'd probably have to pull out every drawer to find something that they want to play.
Yeah. So for young kids, absolutely. They're not going to play with it if they can't see it.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure there are some parents watching who are like, but my kid will open a rubbish bin and play with that. That
Mm.
happens
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
But you can observe that in your child, and you can make their playtime more exciting by, giving them things like boxes that they
Mm.
can put stuff in or pull stuff out of. But yes, for the majority of very young kids, that object permanence hasn't really set in yet,
Yeah.
and they need to be able to see it. That part does require some support to put things away, and having far fewer things makes that a lot easier. So you can have, for example, open shelving, specifically the sort of cube shelving works really well, but you can't just shove whatever you can into that space. Each cube needs to be 1 or 2 items. Otherwise, when you ask your child to put it away again, they don't see a spot for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it will just go wherever.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to spend more time eventually dealing with all of it again.
Yeah. Have you got any hints about, I hear this a lot from families, about people giving their children shit that you just don't want in your house?
Yes.
It's a huge one.
Oh, I don't want to call out everyone, but and maybe a hashtag not all grandparents, but a great deal of the stuff that comes to children is coming from grandparents or well-meaning aunts, uncles, etc., etc. It is nearly impossible to avoid. You can say all the things in the world and you're still going to end up with piles of stuff. I do recommend starting with talking to people about it, letting people know that you're doing this for your mental health. Sometimes putting it in a way that you're asking for help.
Yeah.
Like, I really appreciate this. You bring us such beautiful gifts, but I'm really struggling, and I have found that reducing clutter in my home makes a big difference to how well I cope and how well I parent. I would really appreciate if you could reduce how frequently you give us things, maybe just, one gift at birthday time and one gift at Christmas, something like that. If you have wonderful parents, grandparents, whoever, they will recognize that and appreciate your thoughts and go with it. But there are always going to be some special occasions, or I just saw this, or just because. And we don't want to burn bridges with our family and friends just because their idea of clutter is different to ours. But you need to respect yourself. You need to respect that goal and the dream you have. And so frequently the hardest things to declutter, the hardest physical things, I should say, to declutter are the gifts, because they feel like they come with guilt and obligation. Even if you don't like them, you feel like you have to keep them because so-and-so gave this to me. That was the last thing Granddad gave me before he died. This was an heirloom from so-and-so. And each one of those items is going to come with stories, and it's going to come with its own way that we need to process it. But there are some overarching general ideas that may be helpful and have definitely been helpful for myself and for my people. That is the idea of a gift. The purpose of a gift is in the giving, not in the keeping forever. So if I give you a gift,
sign a contract, this is the
exactly.
This is the gift that we've received now. Thank you, but you don't have to keep it.
Exactly. So Tracy, if I brought you a present, said, Tracy, I saw these beautiful earrings and I thought of you, and I just thought they would look so good on you, and here they are. I give them to you. You receive them and you say, oh, thanks, Lauren. They're beautiful. That was really kind of you to think of me. That's it. That's the whole process done. What happens after you have accepted that gift is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
This is hard for a lot of people to handle, because we have been raised, most of us have been raised to take that gift and then treasure it like it was the most important thing ever. Because generations ago, you just didn't get nice things except as gifts. So they were rare, they were precious, they were unique. Now, sometimes every time Nan goes to the shop, she comes back with a special little, Matchbox car or another Barbie doll or beautiful fake necklace, because they're so cheap, they're so easy to get hold of.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how expensive, it doesn't matter how precious it was as a gift, it belongs to you now. Once that gift is handed over, it belongs to you. You can choose what to do with it. If somebody is offended by what you've chosen to do with it, that's actually not your business. That's on them. That can be harsh. It can feel really hard, but the more you declutter, the easier it gets. And you can find ways to soften the blow. So if it's something special that's maybe an heirloom, that's another whole can of worms, whole new can of worms, when it's an heirloom, but it's a similar process. So if I have something that was an heirloom from my grandmother, for example, and I no longer want it, I could contact some of my other family members and say, look, this was Nan's. I really wanted it at the time. I love it, but it doesn't really work for me anymore. I don't want it anymore. Would you like it? You give the rest of the family an opportunity. You can even offer it back to the person who gave it to you. And that often comes, again, mums seem to push a lot of guilt onto us. So grandma, for your young kids, you can say, hey, I really appreciate these toys that you gave our kids. We don't have room for them and they don't really play with them at our house.
Yeah.
Would you like to have them at your house for when they come and play at yours? And if Nan says, no, I don't have room for it, well, that's the same conversation, isn't it? She doesn't have room. We don't have room. If she's not willing to keep it, why should I have to keep it?
Yeah. The thing about toys too, and this is helpful to express to family members or people who give toys, is helping them to understand that some toys kids play with for a very short period of time and then it's done. It's lost its shine. But there are certain toys that can get replayed over and over again, like puppets for little performances or car tracks or train sets or craft materials or gardening things, all sorts of, there are some really, really good toys. We've got a list of them in the parent growth zones to help parents to sort of build up a stock which gives children the capacity to create and recreate, which is really building the seeds of imagination and then intellect. So it's a wonderful concept. So communicating that to people can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So Lauren,
when there's a gift giving occasion coming up, that's a great time to be really clear on what will be more likely to be loved and kept. So you can say, okay, my son has really shown an interest in music lately, and we would like to encourage that. We've had our eye on, a little guitar or something, or he's started playing this instrument, and for some kids that's very young. We'd like to encourage this with some music lessons or not non-toy related things. Experiences. So specifically asking with plenty of notice for what you would like them to have, physical or experience related, can make it much easier for the giver to still feel like they're contributing and still get that joy of giving without it contributing to your clutter or overwhelm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And sorry, I do want to slip in one more thing there. I want you to declutter your expectations of yourself and of your child, because Tracy, you have that wonderful list of toys. I know some kids, including my own, that might never touch puppets. Your kids are unique. And if they're not interested, it doesn't matter how many beautiful puppets you have, they might not play with them. Or it might be the trains or the blocks or whatever it is. If your kids aren't playing with them, don't force it on them. Don't make them keep things just because it's one of those things that you're supposed to have. You can declutter all the obligations and all of the expectations and just do what's working for you and your family.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, Lauren. It's a topic that I think could really add some thinking for people who are looking at their own spaces and how to make it nicer as parents. So I really appreciate it. Lauren's given a special offer for our community for people who've signed up for this. So if you look at the show notes, you can see that she's offering a course called Toy Clutter.
Combating toy clutter.
Combating toy clutter. So you'll get a little bit of a discount for that. So that might be something you want to pursue. Thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated talking to you, and I hope people have got a lot out of it. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye.